I hope everybody can take and catch this a bit. I'm going to go over here in my XSplit and share my stream over here on Facebook so everybody knows what it's going for. So just bide with me for just a little bit and we'll get it up. There's our login to that. Let me run over to Facebook and see what we got here. And we're going to go over there. XSplit is kind of messy. It seems like you've got to kind of do quite a few things at once while you're actually streaming because it won't let you take and do anything. We've got XSplit here. I'm wondering, let me take this. Let's add the stream link to it. Let's share it again. Bear with me. I'm just kind of really learning about all of this right here and getting everything to work. Trust me, it is not simple. There it is. My live stream's up and it's posted. So probably some people are going to see that. They're going to hop on here pretty quick. What we're going to get going on here right now is our video. And XSplit doesn't like a whole lot of stuff up at once, does it? There it goes. Alrighty. What today's video is going to be is some Twin Comanche flying. We actually did this, so is going to be in two parts. The first part, of course, I'm going to be doing tonight here with you. And the flight evolves into some unexpected weather, and that's where part two is going to come into play. So basically a little bit about myself. I am an airline transport rated pilot, a CFI, Certified Flight Instructor, authorized for instruments and multi-engines instruction. And even if you're not aviation oriented, you'll probably still like this. The Twin Comanche is a light twin engine airplane. Mine was built in 1969. When I was in high school, I was 16 years old, and that's when my airplane was built. We also walked on the moon the first time in August of 1969. So there's a little history here. It's kind of neat with the plane that the technology that we're flying around in here was basically the same technology that put us on the moon. And I've had this airplane for just 10 years now, and it's been around a little bit. We take it to Florida every year usually, and then I also instruct for the CPPP, so it flies around to some clinics. So without any ado, what we're going to do is we're going to take and I'm just going to narrate over the top of this puppy, And we're going to get the show on the road, and there should be some background audio, I believe, with it. But we'll kind of talk you through, everything that's going on. So we're going to start rolling it now. And of course, this is just outside the hangar. It's pulled out of the hangar, and I'm running just a contour camera over my left shoulder here. With a suction cup mount to the window. So you pretty much are going to see just about everything that I see, from the cockpit and also outside. So it's, kind of point of view for just about everything. And of course, go through our pre-flight checklists and get everything ready to start. And I'm probably, doing a little bit of checking there. Actually, I think I was bringing up the LEDs on the contour to check alignment, which you actually can't even see from there. But you want to get everything ready, get organized in the cockpit, make sure that you've got, if there's manuals you're going to be using, you want to make sure they're handy and that you've got them in a convenient location. And then, of course, you want to take and always kind of run a checklist also. So come up with a master and a boost pumps. We're going to prime that left engine. And we check clear. And it needs a little more boost.
No, it doesn't. So what the fuck are you supposed to do?
And it's turning. One of the things you notice, it looks like the props are all bent and flying off the airplane, and that's just a function of the scan inside of the camera. It actually is taking very quick snapshots, and believe it or not, that's how the propellers look. And you can kind of see up over the dash to the right, we got the right engine turning, and it was a little thirsty too, so we're going to give it another little boost, and you can take and feel a little bit of shudder when the airplane comes to life. And the speed you see the props turning over to the camera really don't mean anything, because it's just whether they're happening to be syncing with the scan or not. And also you'll notice that flight instrumentation, a lot of electronic flight instrumentation in the airplane's the same situation where, the human eye is not seeing these scans, but the camera's so fast that you can see that a lot of the instrumentation's really flashing, when to the human eye, it just looks normal. So we let them warm up a little bit. Of course, right after start, you're always going to check for oil pressure. And there's my Stratus, which is the ADS-B and the ADAHRS add-in for the iPad for FlightAware, or not FlightAware, but for ForeFlight. And we start that up, and for lack of a mounting bracket, we just put it up in the dash. I do have a new glare shield that we're going to get in one of these years, and then we'll have the Stratus mounting bracket right on that, so there's no chance of it flipping around, especially if you're using the ADAHRS for backup, because that is your EFIS that's on your iPad. And if you pick up the Stratus and start moving it around, believe it or not, the EFIS goes all over the place. So you wouldn't want that thing to be relied upon and have it pop off the dash in some turbulence and tumble around on the floor, because it virtually, if it landed upside down, would show your airplane upside down. So that would not be a good thing. So they're getting warmed up here. We do have an IFD 540 in this airplane, which I think is one of the slickest things to ever come along. And we're moving out now, beginning our taxi. As we come up to the end of our hangar row here, that's where our movement area begins, and we'll have to take and call and get ourselves a clearance to proceed further down the taxiway. So we're dialing the frequencies, we're checking for the ATIS, etc. And I gotta check the date that we did this. I think this is got to be early winter, possibly, actually, maybe even a warmer day, midwinter. Yeah, I should get the date and tag it onto the video here. And we're setting up some information in our IFD 540. And what we're doing this flight, we're just going to go out and shoot some practice instrument approaches, and primarily just going to stay VFR. We do have an overcast, but it's a higher overcast, so it's really not going to take and make much difference to us. We'll most likely will remain VFR as we do these practice approaches. And we're just copying down ATIS here and probably waiting for our taxi clearance. Yep, I believe we got our clearance because we grabbed a legal pad there and writing down the information. We are based at, I'm going to call it Greater Rockford Airport, but it's not. It's Chicago Rockford Airport. If you fly around anywhere long enough, they always decide they're going to change stuff on you. So, of course, that in the old approach plates, they moved it. You're looking all over for the Greater Rockford Airport under the R's, and it's not. It's Chicago Rockford. We magically moved closer to Rockford. Identifier is Romeo Fox Delta, Kilo Romeo Fox Delta. And we're going to be heading out to Kilo Fox Echo Papa at Freeport. And then ultimately in part 2, you'll see us, we're going to go up to Echo Foxtrot Tango, which is Monroe, Wisconsin. And we ultimately are going to wind up back down here at Rockford. So I think things are looking pretty good here. When we key up, if you notice the mic button there on my left index finger, I key up and I say, yep, we're ready to taxi. And we blab a little bit back and forth. And probably reading back to clearance there because it's kind of longer. Yep, we had to write something extra down. Don't know what that is.
I'd be Monroe.
And I wouldn't be surprised that we're going to begin to move. Goes pretty fast when you're actually sitting in the cockpit, and you really do, especially in the winter, you really want to get a little bit of cylinder head temperature on your engines, you know, even before you run them up, and you know, make sure that everything is, you know, getting some temperature to it, because it is the best operating condition for wear on the engine, etc. And the taxiway leading out of here is Charlie, and we're going to go up here to Gulf, and I believe we take a left here, and we're going to take the Gulf intersection departure out of 25. And I'm a proponent on not taxiing at 30 mile an hour. Call me strange, but you know, right about there is my favorite taxi speed. It's good for me and it's good for my students. It doesn't scare me when you're taxiing at this speed. I guess technically what they're going to say is a reasonable speed, and you know, that might be okay, but who determines reasonable? Well, don't know. Here we are, we're lined up on the taxiway. Yeah, this is probably Gulf we're on here now. We're heading out to 25. Probably you'll see up in the ahead of us here is the UPS terminal at Rockford. We have a UPS hub here,
Press the button
and
hard.
it's a pretty major operation. It
Did you
really
press it
is,
hard?
put life back into um, Chicago Rockford Airport, just because we have traffic, and traffic means business, and business means money. So, there's been a fair amount of improvements here that maybe wouldn't have happened quite as fast without, the UPS hub here. Uh, it's hard to say, but and we do have a couple of airline flights in and out of here on a daily basis too. I think to Vegas and to Florida, so it's kind of handy. And if you can get where you need to get going, um, at those locations, it saves you having to go into O'Hare, which is, an hour and a half bus ride, anyhow, hour and 40 minutes, or else, otherwise having, to be brought in, have somebody take you in to catch a flight in there. And then as of late, the TSA, it's one of the worst places there is for getting through TSA, so you might get there and miss your flight anyhow. And we're doing a little checklist now. We're checking the controls. And of course, we got our checklist out. Um, on upcoming videos, I do have a new device, flip tab checklist, which I actually used in a Queen Air when I was a kid, flying it, and of course it was bolted to the airplane. And after we parted ways, I never seen the device again. And I actually took and sat down from memory, designed one, built the parts in a 3D printer, and I actually have it in the airplane right now. And we'll probably be offering that to various friends or whatever if they'd like to have it. The neat thing about the flip tab checklist is it's not connected to any electricity. It works all the time. You don't have to page through your GPS or even on your iPad to find it. It's all mechanical. You flip tabs up to go up, you flip tabs down to come down. If you get interrupted in the checklist, one glance at it and you know exactly what items are left that you need to do in order to take and safely accomplish your mission to go up or your mission to go down. And it looks like I'm calling for takeoff clearance now. We'll see how soon we get it. And setting the runway, setting the bug in the HSI to the runway heading, which is always a good idea. Especially if you're taking off IFR. If you're going to lose an engine, one of the most important things is that you maintain heading with the airplane, and you're going to need to take a track outbound on the runway heading as you square things away and determine what kind of situation you have developing. A little bit on the takeoff roll here. You can see the airspeed's just about dead center in the camera. And one thing about Twin Comanches is they love to fly, but they're twins, so you still have your VMC issues, etc. And I will talk you through what I consider to be one of the safest methods of takeoff using the Twin Comanche. And what you're going to do is you bring the power up, and that little airplane, you want to leave it on the ground near VMC, but you don't. It wants to fly, and it's just dying to come off. So go ahead and bring it off, and it'll tell you, it'll talk to you, and it'll take and bring you off in the air. Then you're just going to hold that climb just a little bit until you see the positive rate on the vertical speed. Pull that gear, and then you can see go right to blue line, and you're going to want to take and hold blue line to a safe altitude where you're going to go to cruise climb. And the takeoff in a Twin Comanche, as you can see right there, is pretty healthy. You don't take and roll for a very long time. And basically what you want to do is take and make that decision point where you're going to commit, to go, and then get as much altitude as quickly as you can while maintaining your best single engine rate. And you start your climb out, and once you get here about 1,000 foot right now, and of course everything's settled down, and I recommend uh, leaving throttles full, wide open, and you actually make your first power reduction by simply pulling your props back to 2,500. And that's another thing that's unique the way I fly a Twin Comanche, but I've flown a lot of airplanes and was taught that way, many years ago. If you leave your throttles wide open, you're going to be on the enrichment ramp for the full throttle portion of your fuel controller. And in other words, if you come off of the stops, pull it back, it starts to go onto the cam where you're actually going to start taking and reducing your mixture. So if you push them all the way forward, it's going to give you a real rich mixture for your initial climb out. And what I do is basically somewhere around 2,000 feet, something like that. Then I will reach up and I'll grab the mixtures and I'll pull them back till I can just see a drop in the fuel controller, because at that point I took the mixture controls and pulled us off the rich ramps of the throttles. And then of course, as you're climbing, you're going to want to stay more enriched, but still at that point in time, your mixture controls truly are controlling the mixture. Whereas if you pull your power back, in the old days it'd be 25 inches and 2,500. Well, now you're off the enrichment ramp and you're actually throttled. So as you head up, what you're going to have to do is every 1,000 feet you got to push throttles up an inch until they're full throttle anyhow. Leave them full. Especially the little Lycoming 320s on this, they just love that. Leave them your throttles full, have your props at 2,500, and pull your mixture controls back, as required. And you're going to want to stay rich in the climb, keep your cylinder head temperatures down. But then once you get to altitude, you never touch your throttles. You're going to take and pull your prop controls back. And typically in Twin Comanche, it's another thing I learned about them, because I come from the school of turning props slow, and I messed around with 2250, 2300 in this airplane. Those little Lycomings, they like to turn up, leave them at 2400. I've even had flights where I'd like to leave them at 2450. The airplane's smoother. It just likes to, take and turn up faster. Now, if you're in a Baron or even a Queen Air, something that's, heavier engine in it, they seem to just love to come down to 23, 2350, 22, 2250, anywhere in there. And of course, the slower you turn them, that will take and start to drop your fuel flows a little. And in those airplanes, that's a big deal. And the Twin Comanche, fuel's not nearly as big an issue. You can run 24 squared all the time in this airplane for 16 gallons total. And you burn that in a Cherokee 6. Your Baron, if you want to just kind of cruise, you can go 24, 28 gallons an hour if you're actually going to utilize the airplane, like it should be to get somewhere. If you want 190 knots out of Baron, you're going to burn about 32, 34 gallons an hour. So, and you can get 160 knots out of this on 16 gallons an hour. So, unless you have a god-awful hurry to get somewhere, you're going to do a lot better, financially, with a Twin Comanche. And now, the fuel prices are back lower again, so it's not a big issue, but still, no, you can get healthy fuel bill in a month with your Baron or your Aztec. And Twin Comanche, you can actually, you can go out and fly it more. Off to the left, above the left spinner, I believe, I'm not sure about that. I was going to say I thought that was the Byron power plant, but I don't think it is. That might just be, a fire out there. Well, we are heading towards the west, and I believe we're going to take vectors, and we're going to do the GPS 6 over in Freeport. So we're just bopping along here. And Freeport's probably, I don't know if I've got it cranked up on this flight or not, but, probably get over there in about 12 minutes, something like that. That may be Byron off to the left, because I believe that's the Rock River that's just below the left spinner right now. And coming in for 6, they're going to take and bring us around by the south. Might be giving us a little turn right now, and I believe they are. So we got kind of a higher overcast today, and I believe the altimeter is showing that we're about 3,000. I think that's pretty much what we do when we're doing local IFR here. So our overcast is, quite a ways up there. It could be 6,000, 7,000 feet, and visibility is like great. It's like, there's at least 50 or 60 miles out there right now, I would say. So it's pretty good weather, and you can tell, just by the camera that it's pretty dead smooth out there also. So other aspects of a Twin Comanche, various rules of thumb, okay? Most Twin Comanches, especially Turbo Twin Comanches, hug the forward CG. And if you throw full fuel in it and a couple guys in the front seat, your airplane is going to be really close to the front CG. To the point where, a lot of people throw some weight in the baggage compartment just to take and move it back a little bit. And that probably does have a factor with the old wives' tale on Twin Comanches being very hard to land, and it's not true. Twin Comanches are very easy to land. They are very hard to grease. But isn't that what everybody wants? Don't you want a challenge? You can drive a Chevrolet or a Lamborghini. I've always liked the airplanes that had a little challenge to them, because I'll tell you what, a Cherokee 140 just doesn't get it. Same way with tail draggers. I can remember as I transitioned to the dreaded ground looping Citabria, and then as time moved on, I wound up to the dreaded ground looping Twin Beach, and to the dreaded turbine Twin Beach, and then to the dreaded 20 series Lears. So, they were all awesome airplanes. They taught you so much about flying. And same way with the Twin Comanche. They will teach you so much about flying that you can't believe it. And you get a good feeling of satisfaction when you take and can take and get one with that airplane, where that airplane just pretty much responds to every thought, and you're just dialed into it. It's really personally satisfying. And unfortunately nowadays, I grew up and learned to fly in the era where the airports were packed with student pilots every weekend. Cars were lined up in a row, people there getting rides and taking flying lessons. And unfortunately, and there's still a lot of aviation going on, but unfortunately, a lot of it is turned into the high dollar turbine stuff for business and rich people, and it's all up in the flight levels. And there is activity up there, but the middle income to upper middle income person really can't justify flying anymore, and it really shows. If you go up on a Saturday, you used to hear a lot of chatter with every on Unicom at every airport, where there'd be somebody in the pattern shooting touch and goes, and you had to keep your eyes open, which is probably a bad thing. Now you really don't have to. It's rare that you're going to take and be in the pattern at some of these outlying airports with any other airplane but yourself. In other words, these are your private airports now. There's just nobody out there. And it's kind of sad, and for the fact is that it used to have a much more active recreational flying community, so to speak, and it doesn't exist anymore. So you still have your type clubs like the ICS, where we all get together and fly our Comanche singles and twins somewhere, and then we have a big convention. We all sit around and eat a lot of food and have drinks. There's camaraderie there. The one thing that I will tell you about these events, though, is the average age of the pilots at these is not young. These are people that maybe always wanted to take and get into flying and fell in love with Comanches, which there is a lot to love about them. And so they finally get one, and finally get old enough and save enough money, they can get one and enjoy it. And more power to them. As of late, I'm doing a lot of transition training in Twin Comanches as they change owners, and the new owner is of the type, in fact, it was just 2 weeks ago I checked out a Delta Airlines captain in his new Twin Comanche. So they come from all walks of life. It's like the airline pilot now, it's like, I'd like to have a personal plane that I can bop around into, just besides flying this big iron all the time. And then a lot of the people are up towards retirement age or whatever. They figure, this is the last hurrah, and most of them have been pretty successful in business, and they take and decide, it's now or never, and away you go. This particular airplane here, I came across 10 years ago, and it was owned by a retired General Motors engineer. And I'd been looking around for a Twin Comanche, not terribly seriously, but I had been looking for one. And I found this one in Dayton, and we actually decided to go take a look at it on our way to Florida. And met the owner there. We went to his hangar, and he rolled open the hangar doors. And first thing I noticed was the hangar floor was painted machine gray, except for the area the tires rolled in and out. And they had black stripes painted on the floor. And I says, something like, why the black stripes? He says, well, that's so the tires won't leave black marks on the hangar floor. And basically the rest of this airplane was pretty close to the same caliber as that hangar floor. So I looked at it for a while, called my wife back home. I says, this airplane is like close to once in a lifetime opportunity. I says, can I buy it? And she said yes. So anyhow, that's how we took and wound up with the Twin Comanche. Up to that point, I'd belonged in a flying club. I had a share in an Arrow, and I just really was flying it, a fair amount for business. And I I didn't. I was getting into some ice, and it was slow, and single engine. I was flying, doing some night flying. I says, I need this twin. So you think, well, that'll shorten up your work day, your business day. But since you got that twin and you're more all weather, it actually had the opposite effect. When I'd leave early from somewhere to stay out of as much darkness as possible in the Arrow, I really wouldn't care with the Twin Comanche. I'd come back 10, 11 o'clock at night. So it had the opposite effect. It actually made my days longer. But it had a lot better automation in it too. There's an S-Tech 55X in here, and it had a 530, which I was never really impressed with. And then we actually put a deposit on our Aventine 540 in 2011, and it did take, I think, 2.5, 3 years for us to get it. But it's an FMS, and it is sweet. I absolutely love it, especially for reroutes and editing flight plans. You can do anything with it. It's intuitive. It's easy to use. It's got super situational awareness to it. It's just an awesome box. I can't say enough good things about it. And I have not flown the new Garmin stuff, but this kind of got, the concept of the 540 got ahead of the new Garmin boxes, and I fell in love with it. The first time I saw it, it just took a while to get it delivered. So I think the guys vectored around here on, I believe the guys vectored around here on the GPS 6 into Freeport, and we should be able to see the runway coming up here pretty quick, I would think. Yeah, I believe it won't be long. So, various things that Twin Comanches will take and do to you. It just so happened that the first actual emergency gear extension I've ever done was in my Twin Comanche, and it was a non-event. Happened over at Freeport, and I threw the gear out, and the circuit breaker popped, and I put the gear handle back up, and I reset the circuit breaker. How many times do you reset a circuit breaker? Once. I reset it once, and I put the gear out, and it tripped again. And I was pretty new. I don't even think I was at my first CPV clinic as a student. So I pulled the cover on the emergency gear extension, which is down below your right knee. And lo and behold, there's a nice little group of instructions in the back of it. And popped that open and started reading through exactly what to do, pulling circuit breakers, this, that, and the other thing. And I reached down and disengaged the drive assembly, and ta-boom! The gear comes out, the light is green. Everything is good. And later I found out that the malfunction I had was a little solenoid that was pushed up against a little rotating coupling in there, and one of the little segments fell out and the plunger fell into it. So the experience I have now, if that happened again, I'd pop that open, I'd notice what that was, I would pull that plunger out, reset the circuit breaker, put the gear down, gear go down, everything would be fine. So there are actually several different ways you could extend a gear in a Twin Comanche besides the emergency method where you disengage the drive. And in some cases, if you disengage the drive and it still doesn't come down, you've got it bound in the upwards position, and you had better know the other methods to roll it down, or you will be landing gear up. So, bopping along. If you watch the speeds here, you can tell that I'm an old charter pilot. I tend to blast around on the initial approach segments kind of fast, because basically you can get kind of bored. If you're ahead of your airplane, flying can be boring. If you're behind it, it's a challenge, and you've got to work sometimes. But you know, that's all part of the game. You know, when you're flying. And we're all established here. Everything's looking good. Right at our 2,600 feet here for our initial approach segment here. And like I say, I'm still blast along. Normally when I instruct in instruments, I say, you know, good speeds out here on your initial approach segment if you run 120 knots. And in the old days, before all the electronics and the GPSs and everything, and you had approach charts with you had times and distances on, and they'd have a time chart down there for like 90 and 120 knots and 180 knots. It works out real good. If you fly 120 knots, you're going 2 nautical miles a minute. So it's like if you're 4 minutes out, or if you're 4 miles out, you're 2 minutes out from the runway. So a lot of the mental gymnastics that we used to do early on in the more primitive days of flying, you don't have to do anymore. I mean, it's all laid out there. And as an instructor and such, every once in a while, I'll turn some of that automation off, because, you know, we really need to get back to the basics and know that, you know, if a couple of tubes go out in that airplane, can you still fly the airplane? You know? And the thing is you need to practice that once in a while. If something quits working, you know, the engines don't fall off the airplane. You know, you still have the ability to fly the airplane, maintain control of the airplane. It's just your navigation is going to become a little harder to do. You're actually going to have to think about stuff, especially if you go back and you have to go back and rely on, you know, VOR or ILS or localizer. And ILS is still, you know, even with the new automation, are still pretty popular, because they, in many cases, they are still going to have the lowest minimums. They're going to be lower than the LVP on your GPS, so you want to make sure, you know, that you don't get lulled into just shooting every approach as a GPS approach. You know, you mix it up with some ILSs. The only thing I'll say don't bother with, unless you plan on, well, just don't bother with it, is that just about every airplane has had the ADF thrown out by now. But that's one of the devices that would work you out under actual instruments. And yes, I have shot real ADF approaches. I probably haven't shot a real ADF approach for 25 years, maybe 30. But there are a lot of smaller airports before GPS. Many of them, that's all I had was an ADF approach. And even if you did have a VOR approach, if the VOR was, you know, remotely located off the field, you know, you still had some fairly high minimums, just because of the navigation tolerance for, you know, that type of approach. So you still had to take and watch out for that. So we're still plugging along here. Oh, I believe I see the runway out there. It's one of the reasons small airplanes, I do cook them right along, because you actually have a mountain of time for bracketed in approaches in smaller airplanes. I mean, you have minutes. You know, if you're flying something, you know, it's hotter, you know, 180 knots ish, you know, a jet or something like that, things will happen a lot quicker. But you know, you can take it, and nothing happens fast in an airplane, and there's time to think. There really is. You know, if something happens really fast in airplanes, odds are you're not going to be able to do anything about it because it's catastrophic of some sort. Normal operations are not that bad. Now, right above the ADS Stratus there, it's kind of water bank for it, but you can see there's the runway right out there. At this point, I'd say you're probably about a mile and a half from that runway. And you can see the altimeter's winding down to our decision height. I believe this is an LVP that we're shooting here. And if you can imagine, you know, for your non-aviation types, you could still be in the cloud all the way down to about here. And it's going to say, boom, it's time to see the runway. Now you see a hand on the throttles. There's our mist, I believe. And away we go. And you see the vertical speed come up. And we're on climb. And the mist approaches, when you're down there and you don't see the runway, you're down there near the ground, near towers, near buildings, near trees, near everything, which means that this is critical. It's one of the things I stress on my goes is power up, pitch up, go up, clean up. And in that order. Sometimes we tend to say, well, we'll pull a gear up. We haven't even got the power in. Props respond pretty quick, but jets and such, I mean, first thing you're going to do is get the power in. Power up, okay? Even if everything's hanging out, if you got full power in, start to bring your nose up, pitch up, and start to get that initial climb, okay? You'll get it, okay? Now, so power up, pitch up, go up, okay? And you're going to get that vertical speed because that's what's going to tell us to reach over and clean up, pull a gear. And you know, until you're at a minimum of circling minimums, if there's a circling approach for that airport, I want you to get me out of that dungeon and get me safely above all obstacles as quickly as you possibly can. It's a max performance situation. Let's say the airplane's full, heavy, you happen to still have a lot of gas on board and everything else. That's when it's going to really make a lot of sense to get the most performance out of that airplane, get me out of that dungeon, get me back up in the air where I'm safe again. So, and I'll see, you know, even some experienced pilots, because one of the things on go-arounds is we very seldom do it. We usually take and make our landings everywhere we go. This go-around is valid. My technique is valid if you're going to take a missing approach. It's valid if somebody drives a fuel truck across the runway, you know, in front of you. Power up, pitch up, and of course, fuel truck, there's one other thing. If he's drove onto the runway, I'll actually take a slight turn and get off center line of the runway and avoid that at the same time. But you know, the power up, pitch up, go up, clean up. Very important. One of the most important aspects of instrument flying. So we've done our mist. We're doing our mist here at Freeport, and we're going to take it head up towards Monroe. Oh, there's a little puff of a cloud there. It's a gorgeous day. I mean, it's overcast, but look at all of the visibility, etc. And Monroe, I mean, that's only about 8-10 nautical miles north of us from where we're at right now. So, and I checked the weather, the area weather, everything looked pretty good. You know, just high overcast. So we take and it's probably a call for a miss, and they're going to start giving us vectors. And we'll take a little turn to the north here shortly, and all of a sudden, it's not looking quite as nice as it did. Huh. So anyhow, let's take and have a look and see what happens. There's another little puffy cloud. It looks like it's below us. I don't know. So you can be bopping along on a beautiful day. Not a care in the world. And I will tell you what happens. As we were practicing these VFR, and we're about 3 or 4 minutes, and I call and I convert this to a real IFR. God forbid we turn back from our desired trip, right? Well, if you're a VFR pilot, what you're seeing right now, right here, should start to take and ring alarm bells. Okay, you got no problem, got a lot of spacing, got a lot of cloud clearance and everything else. I mean, you got every opportunity, and you came from just gorgeous weather. And you know, if you just start a turn and turn 180 degrees, within minutes, you're going to be back in gorgeous weather again. There's not going to be any problem whatsoever. So, you know, it's always the safest thing to do is to err on the side of safety. Things tend to take and cascade when you have problems, and normally it's not a single issue that can take and cause you serious trouble. It's the chain of events that does it. So we're still putting along here, still see the ground, but as you can see now, the horizon is pretty much gone. It's kind of like the clouds are kind of there, and it just hazes right to the ground. So, you know, we're approaching a position where you're going to no longer be able to maintain VFR. Okay, that might have been my call right there. It says, and now you can start to see the clouds come underneath you. Now the alarm bells, if you're a VFR pilot, now the alarm bells should really be going off, because you're about to fly in real world IFR conditions here any second. And I believe I did call for, I called them up and says, you know what, we're going to have to convert this to an actual. I said, oh, no problem, gave me the clearances, and well, actually we had vectored on the GPS up there, and very, very soon here. Remember, this is less than 10 nautical miles this all took place. I couldn't have picked a better flight to make a training video out of. And there we are. Kind of see the outline of a cloud there to the left, but basically you are now IFR. And this is coming up just about on the end of part 1 here. You see a little bit of ground contact yet, but very little. And of part 1, we got about 2 minutes left of part 1. Part 2 is takes off right from us being solid IFR right here, and it'll run us through a real IFR approach where you can see exactly what it looks like as you bust out and you make ground contact. And the only thing, I won't give you a hint, but I am looking right now to see if we'll see this on part 1, and I don't think so. But on part 2, you can see snow. Oh, there it is. First flakes of snow. See it against the stripes on the left engine nacelle? And this turns out to be a real world IFR approach, 2 minimums, in a blazing snowstorm. So you're going to want to see part 2. But that's basically, a little bit about the Twin Comanche and, some of the idiosyncrasies of it. And, it's just, the airplane's just a delight to own and fly. And, if you can find a good one somewhere, do it. That's the end of part 1. Hope you enjoyed this. I will take the link and get it up there, so it's going to be permanently available. I'm not sure if I can take and do the part 2 tomorrow night or not, but it will be along here in the evening here sometime yet this week. So hope you enjoyed watching it. And if you ever want to, if you're around Rockford and you want to see what it's like to take and blast around one of these things, get in touch with me and we'll see what we can do. Thanks for watching.